I'll get the slides up too then.
Can everyone see my screen? Insert.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
So this looks like it's the flyer, just a heads up.
Oh,
It's
right. This
Okay.
is our intro, and then I'll go to, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Great question.
Claire, maybe wait until a few, don't, if the waiting room just has Shayna, and when it turns to, give it a couple minutes before you let a few people in together rather than just one person, assuming 4 people join in at 2.
I actually was, we're already being recorded. I was actually in a training this morning with CEA, and I think I was like one of 2 people. So like, if it's just Shayna, she'll be, she's, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm tired, y'all.
All good. I know what you mean. We'll give her the show of her life.
I'm here for it.
Mariella in the chat, in the waiting room, can you just let her know we'll be a few minutes?
Oh, okay, sorry,
Okay.
it broke out.
What
But
did you?
I just heard you. You told, yes, I'm gonna do a follow-up.
Thank you.
You want me to put 2:03 or 2:05 p.m.?
I'll say in a couple minutes,
Okay.
and I'm gonna go off camera. Right?
Sounds good.
We should probably let her in, and we'll just kind of run this because we know people are waiting for a record, usually anticipate a recording. So run this kind of in that way, I think, with that in mind.
Marissa, are you okay table setting that in the beginning? Like, I don't know.
I don't think we need to say anything explicitly, but just kind of how we're just go, as if we were with a larger audience.
Oh, Marissa just showed up, so now she'll have 2 people. I'm gonna admit them both.
Welcome to Introduction to Social Engineering. We'll get started in a few moments. Welcome to Introduction to Social Engineering. We'll get started in a few moments. Please feel free to start introducing yourself in the chat. Thanks for the intro in the chat I see so far. We're excited to welcome you to our final cybersecurity workshop of this series. My name is Marissa Carrera Hernandez. I am the Learning and Member Engagement Coordinator for SBCN. I'd like to start with a few housekeeping items before we can begin. Could you please go to the next slide? While I go through today's guidelines, we love to learn who's in the room with us, so please introduce yourselves in the chat by sending your name, your title, your organization, pronouns, and the native land you're on. As a continuing SBCN practice, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the native land that each of us are on today. Together, let us commit to educating ourselves and advocating for Indigenous people, communities neglected and displaced by the US government and other colonial powers across the world. We will include some resources to help you with your learning in the chat. I know people here are trained in from different areas, so we encourage you to learn what land you're living on by using the website we'll share in the chat and share information for your learning further. Maps can be insufficient and may not fully represent shared spaces, time periods, overlapping territories, and so much more. We encourage you to learn more by engaging with a local Indigenous-led and serving nonprofits in your community. For accessibility purposes, we do have the automated closed captioning feature in Zoom activated. Now with this, you do have the ability to move the captions around on your screen to place it more convenient, or you can disable the closed captioning feature entirely if you prefer not to have it up. To do so, please reference the bar at the bottom of your Zoom, click on live transcript on the right, and then click hide subtitles. If you're having any tech issues or other troubles during the session, please private message me and we'll chat it through. We do ask that you remain on mute throughout the program. Please use the chat to send questions. There will also be time for Q&A at the end. With that being said, I'd like to introduce our speaker from Pocket Security, Ashley Chapman.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Marissa. I am super excited to be here to speak with you all about social engineering, how you all may have encountered it and not even realized it yet. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so our agenda for today, this is kind of just a roadmap of where we're going to go. I'll give you a brief introduction of myself, as well as, what is social engineering? You may have heard of social engineering. I'm actually really curious in the chat if you guys could put if you've ever heard of social engineering or you've ever experienced it, or maybe a member of your family has and you may not have realized it. What are the methods of how a social engineering attack is conducted? How are some of the ways that a social engineer actually accesses your information? What are some practices that we can use to defend against social engineering? And then we'll have a few moments for Q&A at the end. So a little introduction of myself. So my name is Ashley. I'm based on the East Coast in Pennsylvania. I am the Director of Security Awareness and Education at Pocket Security. So I handle building out all of our security training and awareness programs and basically just helping organizations get the word out about security and why it's important. I absolutely love cybersecurity. I think it's something that every single person, whatever age you are, wherever you come from, that it's something that we all should understand, especially because everyone has some sort of device in their hand, from no matter how young or how old they are. And that especially goes to the point about social engineering. So one of the things that I like to think about is you may have heard social engineering before and not realized it, or you may have experienced it or seen it on like from like a Hollywood actor, or out, just out, doing everyday things. or even just watching movies, also working with salespeople. And there's some personality traits in there that kind of lend to social engineering that we'll talk a bit about. But this is definitely, I would say, an exciting part of cybersecurity. It's one that's more important than ever because it's one of the main ways that attackers access organizations. So I'm excited to chat with you all about this topic. Next slide, please. Awesome. So what is social engineering? So in a social engineering attack, an attacker uses human interaction, so social skills, to obtain or compromise information about an organization. So ultimately, they have the mindset of that they want to manipulate a target or a person to get as much information as they can, about someone. So in our previous webinars, we touched on improving secure behaviors and implementing security policies to help protect our nonprofits from cyber attackers. So today we're going to focus mostly on how cyber attackers use humans to gain access to nonprofits using social engineering. So when we think about it, all of us as humans, we all share the same instinctual habits that make us, unique and human. The triangle that you see here is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you've ever taken sociology or psychology, any kind of course like that, you may have seen this. And ultimately, there's these certain needs that every single one of us have. Social engineers, they understand this. They understand that we all have, a sense of fear, are all looking for a sense of belonging, authority. We're all engineered in the same way. And that kind of sounds strange because it kind of makes us sound like machines. Well, we're not machines, but we all have that kind of same like moral fabric, if you will. So ultimately, cyber attackers, they will use this and their understanding of this to manipulate people to give up information without that person even realizing it. So I kind of referenced before about interacting with like salespeople, or you may have seen in like Hollywood movies, we're actually going to have a whole bunch of references from TV shows and movies that you guys may have seen, where there's, con men. You think of like the typical con men that's in a lot of different types of TV shows, movies, NCIS, all those things. You can also think about, intelligence agencies like the CIA and such. They have this understanding of people, and basically by exploiting that, they can get information, or they can ultimately get access to an organization pretty easily. And one other note that I'll add there as well is a social engineer or an attacker may come off very polite. A lot of the times they don't come off as this scary kind of strange person. That is the case in a Mr. Robot instance, which we'll see later on in our show today. But a lot of the times they're super polite, they're friendly, they're encouraging. They come off as being like a friend. And part of that is to build trust. Trust is a huge component to social engineering that we will talk about in our future slides. Next slide, please. Okay, so here is a perfect example of social engineering that's in a Hollywood film. So this is in Catch Me If You Can. Not sure if you guys have ever seen this before, but ultimately this is going to show us how someone can impersonate someone else, and that is social engineering. Let's play the video.
I mean, I hope you understand. My boss sent me to Brooklyn, then Queens. Now he wants me in Long Island to take a few clients out for a night on the town.
I'm sorry, but we're not allowed to cash checks from other banks. How would we know if they were any good?
What did you say your name was?
Ashley?
Ashley? You know what I found on the sidewalk out there? Must have slipped right off your neck.
Is there something I can help you with, son?
Well, you see, it's my grandmother's birthday next week, and I want to get her something extra special. please. I mean, it's my midterm next week and my books were stolen. Please, it's just $5. Dode would have to know.
I'm sorry, but we are not allowed to take checks from people we don't know.
And we can pause the video. Okay, so this is a perfect example of social engineering. So you may have noticed this as Leonardo DiCaprio, if there's any Leonardo DiCaprio fans out there. So essentially, Leonardo DiCaprio, he portrayed several different people to try to convince the human on the other side to do what he wanted. And you know, in one instance, it was cashing a check. You know, in another instance, it involved talking to the bank clerk and basically like distracting her by complimenting her, which is something that a lot of social engineers will do. Basically, they'll try to be polite and offer a compliment to help build that trust. Next slide, please. So social engineering methods. So there's several different methods that social engineers or attackers will use in order to gain access to information. So one of the most common ways, and you guys may have seen these before, I'm curious if you throw in the chat if you've ever been a victim or heard of phishing or smishing or had any kind of experience related to these. So with phishing, oftentimes there's usually a malicious link that's involved. And the thing is, they don't always look malicious. There's a lot of phishing emails out there where there will be basically a picture to click on in the email that is a cyber attacker trying to get access, but the actual link that's in the email itself is not malicious. So it takes those extra steps of really looking around and thinking before you're interacting with something in an email. Oftentimes with phishing, the goal is to obtain stolen credentials, also to launch a cyber attack, start malware, or manipulate an employee into sharing sensitive information. You may see this a lot of the times with like spear phishing attacks, where they basically pick a specific target that they know has access to sensitive information, and they will send an email to that person pretending to be a CEO or someone who's very important, to basically intimidate the end person to give up information that's important. Smishing. A lot of the times we think about this with text messaging, but I've seen it happen in Facebook. It happens all the time in Facebook Messenger, in WhatsApp, in Instagram, any other messaging platform that you can think of, where a cyber attacker will send a malicious link. It can be the sort of thing where, for example, there was Amazon Prime Day, I think it was last week. And basically what they'll do is they know that people are buying stuff on Amazon. They know people are anxious to get their stuff from Amazon. So they will send smishing attacks right around that time frame of when there's a major event that's happening, because they know people will click on it. They know that people won't take the second to think and say, hey, this doesn't look right, or I'm going to go directly to Amazon to confirm this is actually from Amazon and this isn't a cyber attacker trying to access my information. Another thing that I've seen happen a lot lately is there's all sorts of mobile malware that is out there that's installed via like these free apps it could be from the App Store or from the Google Play Store, where sometimes you have to look through reviews and such because the application might have a funky name or it might try to steal permissions. There's also several like banking Trojans that are out there where you ultimately won't be able to tell that someone is interacting with your device. And ultimately, it all starts with clicking on that smishing link. When you click on that link inside of a text message, it basically opens up an instance for that attacker to start controlling your phone, They can control your microphone, your webcam, and not even realize it. So it really takes that extra, step to take a step back and think. Vishing is another one that we see pretty commonly. So you guys may know vishing more as like the robocalls where you get these like spam callers. I've seen it come through where, and we'll actually see an example of this later on in our presentation, but there's been instances where someone will pretend to be from, like Mariella said, from car insurance, or they'll pretend to be from Chase or Citibank, and they will say, I'm calling to verify a transaction, and basically they will be really polite and they'll guide you to try to give up, password or email address so that ultimately that they can get access to that. And the key, I would say, with those three components, with phishing, smishing, as well as vishing, is that they do not come across as threatening. They come across as someone who is just going to go along with what you're saying because they want to build that trust. And then lastly, impersonating in person. So oftentimes we've seen this where a social engineer will put on like an outfit to look like a phone repairman, or someone from like the cleaning crew or a receptionist or whatever. Basically, they'll find attire to blend in. I've actually seen it go as far as, and I referenced the show Mr. Robot, where they will basically impersonate themselves to look like an FBI officer or a form of law enforcement to provide information. That is a federal offense, just as a heads up, but they will go to that extent to basically impersonate someone like that in order to gain access. And if you're interested in those types of social engineering, I highly advise checking out Mr. Robot, because there's all sorts of examples in there. And then the last piece that I'll say about our social engineering methods are that most of the time they look authentic. And that is the hardest part, because a lot of the times, they're not like these Nigerian prince phishing scams. They especially with smishing, and we'll see this in the next slide, but they will be written in tones and in writing that looks like it's coming from a friend, that it doesn't look like it's coming some attacker from a foreign land. They try to mess up your game and to catch you off guard. That's ultimately the goal. Next slide, please. So these are social engineering method examples. So these are actual real social engineering attempts. So the top two up here are a cyber attacker that's actually spoofing someone's family member. So the text message is actually coming from a cyber attacker, but it looks like it's coming from the phone number of a family member. And they're saying, hey, Jason, it's John, just got a new number. And, they're saying about need money because of a car accident, and then they send him a link about a picture that we took together. So it's that extra step of, who is asking me this? Why are they asking me this? And is this out of the ordinary? Think about the everyday people in your life. Think about where they work, the things that they do, the types of questions that they ask you. A lot of this all just stems to a deeper sense of self-awareness about each and every one of us. Think about the people in your life, how they communicate with you. For example, if you have, if your mom or dad usually sends you a text message, and for whatever reason, you have Signal, which is a really awesome secure messaging app, and they send you a message on Signal, that's a little bit weird because they usually don't do that. Just those sorts of things. The text message that's on the bottom there, I actually personally received. So this hit straight home. So I got this text message, and basically they were saying that their family purchases properties as is, that they're willing to talk about someone's address that I know. And they introduce themselves and they say, hey, I'm this person. Again, to build that trust, because now that person's name. It's not this, unknown person that's in a faraway land. This person's name is Michaela. So you're just going to be more convinced to provide information. Next slide, please. Awesome. All right. And I will say that this video does have some graphic content, as well as the rest of our videos may have a little bit of explicit content. So just be aware of that.
Bicycle accident. Fractured tibia about 5 inches below patella.
Dr. Harris,
Yes?
do you concur
Concur with what, sir?
with what Dr. Ashland just said? Do you concur?
Well, it was a bicycle accident. The boy told us.
So you concur?
Concur.
I think we should take an x-ray, then stitch him up and put him in a walking cast.
Very good, Dr. Ashland, very good. Well, you don't seem to have much need for me. Carry on.
Blew it, didn't I? Why didn't I concur?
So this is an awesome example, again, with Leonardo DiCaprio impersonating a doctor. So he is not a doctor by any means. He's a con man. I highly recommend checking out his backstory in this movie, just for reference. But ultimately, he's not a doctor. He's playing a doctor in order to get information, in order to blend in. In this case, he was trying to blend in the environment. So he picked up a doctor's coat that was, on a door or whatever, and basically went and inserted himself into a situation to help a patient. And if you guys caught that, what he did there was he has two doctors. One of the doctors, he was essentially trying to trip that person up, trip that doctor up. And at the end, he ultimately influenced and manipulated that doctor to second guess himself, to be like, you know what, I don't really know what I'm talking about, even though the doctor actively pursues surgeries like this. And that's just another example of how they can very easily influence and control our behavior, unless you take that second to think about, hey, what's going on here? Next slide, please. Okay, so in this video, thank you. In this video, so this is on the other side, this is a woman who actually is a real life social engineer. And ultimately, she is going to call a phone company and get access to someone's email address and other information. Let's take a look and see.
Who are you going to call?
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider and see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
I'm going to spoof from your number, so it's going to look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay? My baby, I'm sorry. my husband's like, we're about to apply for a loan and we just had a baby and he's like, get this done by today. So I'm so sorry. I can't call you back. I'm trying to log into our account for uses information and I can't remember what email address we used to log the account. The baby's crying and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30 seconds,
At gmail.com?
Jessica gets access to my personal email address.
Now, if I needed to add our older daughter on our account so she could call in and make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message? Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Oh, I'm not on there either? So I thought when we got married, he added me to the account.
Jess uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
5127.
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry. So there's no password on my account right now? Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change.
Awesome. Thank you for playing that. So this, I see the comments. I'm saying this is stuff that we all can relate to. It can happen to all of us. Just that easily, that information can be obtained. And ultimately, what were the things that the social engineer did in this case? She played the baby sounds to make it convincing. Social engineers, they'll use construction noise. They basically will build a story. So when you guys think about movies and TV shows, how they build a story, they add in background noises to convince you. It's the same thing. They'll use background noises, they'll use environmental effects to ultimately convince you of their story. It also has to do a lot with like confidence and how they portray themselves. If they can sell the story like she did, she sold the story of that she was married and she has a baby crying and she's trying to apply for a loan. A lot of people can agree with that. The other component in there as well as the baby crying. A lot of times people don't feel like hearing a baby crying on the phone for 10 minutes. So they may try to quickly authenticate that person or do whatever they say in order to get them off of the phone. Something as simple as that. So just these little steps that make a big difference. And ultimately, this is a form of vishing. So for example, the person, the representative on the other end of the phone should have authenticated her from step one through several different safeguards, whether it's social security number, whether it's email address, it could even be a bill amount. I've heard a lot of companies where they'll make you confirm your latest billing amount to make any changes or look up any information pertaining to an account, something like that. Something that cannot be compromised by another person. That's ultimately what we're looking for here. Next slide, please. Okay. So how is a social engineer conducted? Kind of like what we just saw in that last, in our last couple videos. So they identify their target and what their desired end result is. So a lot of the times when their tone will be dictated by what's their desired end result. If they want to build a lasting relationship with someone, they'll really work on building that trust and almost building up a friendship with that person. If it's something where they want to intimidate someone to get access to information right away, they usually will try to scare that person, which we'll see later in the Mr. Robot example. But ultimately, they determine who their target is and they determine what the end result is. The next step is research. Attackers oftentimes will spend days, months, they could even spend years. I've seen it where they've spent 10 years researching an organization or a person that they're looking to compromise. What are the sorts of information that they will look for? They will review social media activity. They will basically look on the person's Facebook, on their LinkedIn, any form of social media that's out there. They'll look for employment and financial records. They basically use this tool or a framework that's called open source information technology, called OSINT, or open source intelligence gathering. That's another word for it. And basically what that means is they use all sorts of tools to deep dive into your data to ultimately find, who are your family members? Where do you work at? Do you have any financial issues? Do you have any personal or relationship issues that they can exploit? And then what they'll do is they'll use that information a lot of the times and they'll pair it with smishing. So, and we won't show this this example in our slides today, but for example, in Mr. Robot, what happens is they have a hard time with extracting data out of one person. So they basically do additional intelligence gathering and they find a supervisor that they want to exploit, that they want to get information from. So they essentially, they figure out that this person's, that the supervisor's husband has heart issues. And they send a text message to the supervisor's phone saying, it's the worst thing, it's what we never envisioned happening. And basically that forces her to go and deal with her husband and leave the building and allow the cyber attacker to get it. So they will literally use that information about you to ultimately get access to mobile devices, to gain insights. They can ultimately launch remote access tools on phones. Ultimately, they will usually use a couple pieces of information together in order to gain access to you. Develop a relationship with the person. So as I was mentioning, a lot of social engineering relies on trust. We'll actually see that in the next video that we watch, where they build a relationship, they build a friendship with that person. They basically become ingrained in that person's life to the point that that person could never envision that person being a social engineer, because they're just so open with them and they've developed such a close bond with them. They then exploit the relationship to gain access, obtain information, or persuade the person to do something. So after they've made that relationship, they will either ask the person to do something, they will like install something on someone's phone or a computer in order to gain access to their computer, to their webcam, their microphone, things like that, or they'll just persuade the person by fear or by intimidation. I've seen this happen a lot with like romantic social engineering attacks, where basically the person will basically set up like an affair, something like that, and they'll try to exploit the person and say, hey, if you don't do X, Y, or Z, then I will let your family know about this relationship. And yes. And then the last step is launching the attack. And more times than not, with launching an attack, it can be a multi-phase process. Like I said, this can happen very quickly. It also can take place over a few years. It really just depends on how badly the social engineer wants to conduct the attack. Next slide, please. Okay, so in this slide right here, we're actually going to see another actual social engineering attack, and how this instructor here, how he convinces and how he's able to convince someone to share information.
The security of a company. So I started off with a phishing email. I told them that I had 10 brand new iPhones, and that to win one of the iPhones as a raffle, they had to click on this link, go to this web page, and give me what we call their domain credentials, which is the username and password to your computer. Out of 1,000 people, how many people did it? 75%. So now I had 750 domain credentials for a major corporation in the United States. I took the top 25 of those, and I called them, and I said I was Paul from tech support. We saw that they just clicked on a phishing email, and now their machine was laden with malware. So to clean it, I needed them to go to this website, download an exe, and install it, but it wasn't a cleaning tool. It was a program called a reverse shell, which allowed me access onto their desktop. I want to play one of these calls for you so you can hear how these exact studies work.
Did your password change?
Yes, I did.
Okay, excellent. Just wanted to tell you that was really good. That's the way it should have been handled.
Okay, yeah. As soon as we realized it, two of us jumped right on it.
Okay, so there was another guy on your team that also?
Yeah, I think it was JR.
JR, okay. I'm just going to write down. I'll be talking to him later on. So just to follow up what we're doing, are you on the VPN right now? You're on your work machine?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to give you an internal address. It's an FTP site that we set up for the employees. You can go there. You can see there's one file there that you'll be able to download, and it will just clean up any residual mess from that website.
Okay.
So if you're at your machine, just open up a browser, and I'll give you the address. Type in STP.
STP?
Yep, F as in Frank, T as in Tom, and then P as in Paul, and then a colon, and then 2 slashes, and these are the slashes that are by your question mark, the same button as your question mark.
Gotcha, STP, okay.
And then the word is update, dash, and the dash is like the minus sign.
Gotcha.
.com.
Okay.
And when you go there, it should open up, it should say index of, and it should have one file. There's a file called PC checker.
Okay, you know it's there. Okay, double click on that.
Yeah, click on that.
Okay.
And it should download.
Okay.
Or it should ask if you want to run or save. Yeah, click run.
Okay.
And if everything goes good, you should get no alerts. You know, if you have a residual problem from that site, then you'll get a message. But if nothing happens and everything's clean and good and we're done.
Okay, I just got a second thing. It said the publisher could not be verified. Are you sure you want to run this software?
Yeah, click OK.
Run again? Okay.
Okay, that's good. So if you got no error message, then you're good to go. You're clean.
So This might have been pretty shocking for you guys to experience. I know the first time that I listened to it, it was. So there's a few things that I want to recap on here. So one being, you'll notice that there are different elements that we're showing on the slides that have to do with behavioral science and basically the chemicals that the brain makes. Social engineers know this and they will use this again against people. Building that trust. Easy things such as stepping someone through a problem. You'll notice that the social engineer's tone was very friendly, very polite, guided the person, made sure that the person knew what they were doing. All these steps to ultimately build trust so that that person says, hey, you know what? This is actually a legitimate person, even though they are a social engineer, and they will continue to exploit that to get the information that they ultimately that they want. Here, as he said, this all started with a phishing link that 75% of people clicked on. So it just kind of goes to show you how easy it is for this to happen, how most people don't realize that it's happening. And really all it takes is a second to think. Next slide, please. So with this video, so you'll recall this. You'll recall this from earlier. This is similar to the video that we watched at the start of our program, but I specifically want you to remember the bank manager. And I think we may have cut it a little short in our first video, but that's okay. You'll kind of see a recap of that here. Let's go ahead and play the video.
Pleasure to have you back, Captain Carlson.
What do you think, Angelo? The tomatoes are ripe this afternoon. Now what have we here?
Your autograph?
You betcha.
Can I have your autograph too?
You gonna be a pilot?
Hmm?
All right, then. Here you go. Work hard in school.
Hello. I'm Frank Black from Monroe High School, and I have an appointment with Mr. Morgan.
You're the young man who's writing the article for the school paper.
Yes, ma'am, that's me. I want to know everything there is to know about being a pilot.
What airports does Pan Am fly to? What does a pilot make in the air, and who tells them where they're going to fly to?
Whoa, slow down. Just take them one at a time.
All right. What does it mean when one pilot says to another pilot, what kind of equipment are you on?
I just want to know what kind of aircraft you're flying. Is it the DC-8, 707, Constellation?
And what about those ID badges that I've seen pilots wear?
Well, every pilot has to have two things with him at all times. One is his airline personnel badge, looks just like this one here from Pan Am. The other one is their FAA license, and that looks just like this.
Can we pause the video here, please? And then we'll start it back in a moment. So I wanted to pause here because there's a few items that we see. So again, we're seeing Leonardo DiCaprio try to impersonate a high school student. Ultimately, if you guys hadn't picked up on that yet, he is talking to a pilot to try to get as much information as possible so that he can impersonate a pilot. He's trying to find out what kind of language to speak, what kind of terms to use. And the thing is, the pilot, of course, is going to give him information because he's a high school student that wants to learn from him. That also leads to being like an authority figure and a sense of self-authority that, of course, he's going to communicate it to a high school student. He's not going to think twice about giving this information to someone who maybe wants to become a pilot someday. Let's play it again.
I can make a copy of this to put into my article.
Oh, Frank, you can have that one. It's 3 years expired.
Oh, thanks. And what about your ID badge? You have an extra one I could borrow?
Oh, no, I can't help you there. It's a special order from Polaroid. The only way to get one of those is to become a real live pilot for Pan American Airways.
Pan Am, may I help you?
Yeah, hello, I'm calling about a uniform.
Hold for purchasing.
Thank you.
Purchasing.
I'm a co-pilot based out of San Francisco. I flew a flight into New York last night, but the problem is I'm headed out to Paris in 3 hours.
How can we help you?
I sent my uniform to be cleaned through the hotel, and I guess I must have lost it.
They lost a uniform. Happens all the time. Go down to the Well-Built Uniform Company at 9th and Broadway. They are uniform supplier. I'll tell Mr. Rosen you're coming.
You look too young to be a pilot.
I'm a co-pilot.
Why so nervous?
How'd you feel if you lost your uniform first week on the job?
Relax. Pan Am's got lots of uniforms. It's going to be $164.
Great. I'll write you a check.
Sorry, no checks, no cash. You'll have to fill in your employee ID number, and then I'll bill Pan Am. I'll take it out in your next paycheck.
Even better. Dear Dad, you always told me that an honest man has nothing to fear, so I'm trying my best not to be afraid. I'm sorry I ran away, but you don't have to worry. I'm gonna get it all back now, Daddy. I promise. I'm gonna get it all back.
Are you a real live pilot?
I sure am, little lady. What's your name?
Celine.
Celine, it's a pleasure to meet you.
It's a pleasure to meet you too. That's 50, 70, 80, 90, $100. You have yourself a great time in Paris.
I always do.
Excuse me? I'm John Modica. I manage this branch. I want to thank you for coming in and using our institution.
Well, it's a pleasure.
And we can pause the video.
Good.
All right, so we didn't show it in our first video, but that's okay. So there's many different things that happened here. So one being, he obtained all that information. He was able to get a pilot's uniform. He got an employee ID number because he made a copy of the pilot's ID number. So he had that, was able to bill that to the company that sells the uniforms, was able to get a pilot's uniform and emulate being a pilot. And then in our first video, this is the same bank that he went to, where he was at the desk with the branch clerk, and then the branch manager was there and said it was the same exact manager, and he said, no, we can't do this. Now, because he's in a pilot's uniform, he's from Pan Am, which is a very well-respected role, as well as a well-respected organization, that now goes over the bank manager's head. He doesn't remember that he met him before. He just sees that, hey, he's from a legitimate place, so I'm going to cash his check. And that's honestly how easy social engineers take advantage of other people. They will, again, how we talked about how they'll do their research. He did his research. He collected all that information. He exploited people to get all those steps in order to be able to cash this check and become a pilot. Next slide, please. And now I've been talking about Mr. Robot through this whole series. So if you guys are not familiar with Mr. Robot, and I won't do a pitch for the show, but if you have any interest in cybersecurity whatsoever, or if you have family members who are interested in cybersecurity whatsoever, I highly recommend Mr. Robot. Of all of the security related movies and TV shows, it is one of the shows that has the most accurate depictions of actual hacking and social engineering than any other show out there. And they will actually, go through the steps that a social engineer or an attacker takes. So in this case, what we're about to watch is Mr. Robot is part of a basically like a multi-stage plan to compromise a data backup facility. So he exploits one person who's like a customer service representative he's taking a different approach. So we saw Leonardo DiCaprio where he was super polite and nice and got along. Now we're going to see the evil side of social engineering, where someone will use fear, intimidation tactics to ultimately control someone. So this may have some explicit language in here. We may cut it before, but just as a heads up, please play the video. Thank you. We might have to play it from the start. There we go. Perfect. We saw the super polite and nice side, but this is also the very realistic side, where Elliot slash Mr. Robot knew that he had to compromise Bill. He picked Bill for a reason because Bill, as you saw on his LinkedIn, is a sales associate and doesn't really mean much to the organization. He also was able to gather from Bill's Instagram and social media that Bill was a bit lonely and didn't have many friends, and was able to exploit those deep feelings inside of Bill to basically say that he needed someone with a sense of authority, meaning the supervisor, and then goes on to compromise the supervisor. As I told you, basically he has the folks that you saw in the other part of the video send a text message to the supervisor, impersonating the supervisor's husband, saying that he has a heart condition, leaving the supervisor to allow the elevator door to be open so that Elliot is able to go up to level 2. So that easy, that is an example of impersonating someone in person and having that social engineering attack conducted in a rather evil, upsetting way. And as I said, kind of in our other slides, either they can take the polite, trusting friend approach, or they can take the fear tactic approach. It all depends on what the mission is. Next slide, please. So what can we do? We've talked all about all this crazy stuff, about all these methods that people can use for social engineering. So one of the things that we can do is we can give our brain a moment to apply critical thinking. And this isn't just with social engineering either. This is with everything in life. Don't jump to performing an action that a text or an email says. It happens to all of us. Everyone does it. But just take that extra second. Sometimes a text or an email or a person that you're meeting aligns with something that just happened in your life, which helps to build trust. Hence the whole Amazon Prime Day smishing attempts. If you take the moment to apply critical thinking, you can combat that. And basically, all it takes is changing your gut instincts to take a pause instead of interact. And always remember that while a social engineering attempt or attack can seem trivial, it can seem like no big deal, kind of like we saw in the Leonardo DiCaprio samples. It can always be a part of a larger cyber attack plan. And this is the most important thing. If you forget everything else and you only remember one thing today, it can always be a part of a larger cyber attack plan that can lead to losing a business, global connectivity shutdowns, or it can even lead to someone dying. Everything that we use nowadays is connected, and all it takes is taking that extra second to think and say, hey, this isn't right. And you never know the impact that you could be making ultimately on someone's life. You could ultimately save someone's life by doing so. And that's why that moment is so crucial. And next slide, please. Well, I thank you all for your attention today. I know we had just a few minutes for questions. I hope you all found this super informative and helpful, as very interesting. I really enjoyed putting this together via social engineering. Is one of the top ways that cyber attackers basically get access to our nonprofits, and it happens very easily, as we saw throughout our video examples today. So happy to answer any questions that anyone has. Absolutely. Really good question. I just saw Dana's question. So what are some policies and procedures that we can implement in our orgs to safeguard against some of these attacks? So some of the procedures and policies, one of them can be as easy as take a second to think. When they're working, when someone's on their phone, take a second, look at the message, look at who it's coming from, look at the text. Are they asking for any kind of urgency? Is there a gut instinct in you as you're looking at a message that doesn't sit right? If it doesn't sit right more times than not, that means that it's going to be something that's bad. You can also, there's all sorts of malicious link checkers out there that you can also test. There's for mobile, there's an app called Trend Micro, where you can actually look at QR codes and phishing or QR codes and links to make sure that they're authentic links. But all of those things are really easy policies and kind of controls that we can set up to just help build that awareness. A lot of what it comes down to is just building the awareness and having people take the second to not react, think before react, ultimately. Really good question.
Ashley, I was wondering if you've been sorry, if you've like been attacked like a cyber attack, what would you say to someone who's like experienced that? Like, how do you rebuild trust in like the internet or like feeling comfortable in your company again?
Amazing question, because I'm sure it's happened more times than not. So the first step after you've been a part of any kind of incident is number one, to set up your safeguards and your controls. Get yourself set up with a good password manager, get your passwords reset. There's resources like the Electronic Frontier Foundation that can share a lot of really good tips on how to protect your devices. And a lot of it too just stems from that awareness of, looking at your phone, seeing if there's anything suspicious happening. And then also like giving yourself a bit of pause and a bit of grace that even the most cyber savvy people, this happens. Sometimes the cyber attacker goes to so many lengths that you can authenticate, you can verify that they know that, and they go to the largest depths ultimately to try to get across. So just know that you're not alone. There are resources out there to help you, and just do better next time. Just set up better safeguards next time. Really good question.
Well, thank you, Ashley. Marissa, I think we're done Q&A now.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I really appreciate it. Thank you again to Pocket Security for the cybersecurity series. It's been really helpful and informative, so we really appreciate that. Please send your reactions in using your Zoom chat functions as well as the emojis. Thank you. Our membership campaign is now live. Please join or renew your nonprofit membership. As a nonprofit association, we want to be accessible to you all as best as possible. Please reference our contact information on the screen so you can contact our team, myself, Marva, and Dana. Your feedback and suggestions help us improve the ways we can improve the sector. So thank you all so much. We hope to see you all at future events.